He will become like the Usain Bolt of javelin. He will win 3 to 4 gold medals. He's just that good. The first 5 minutes that you wake up is critically important. A person who starts with the HRV of 30 is going to be triggered by any stress that hits him as early as 10 o'clock.
I'm a person who can't sleep. What can I do?
Footballers are not trying to kick the ball. They're trying to kick one piece of that leather on that entire ball.
Before playing any sport, everyone has their own ritual. What are certain rituals you have seen that you think people can adopt?
It is a little confusing right now, and there's a lot of controversy around it.
Today is again a very, very important podcast. We have Shayamal back. In last podcast, we discussed so many things, and internally I was very excited to meet him again. Shayamal ji will talk a lot about today. We have a lot of time today. We'll discuss, we'll go into depths, we'll do a lot of follow-ups, we'll try to get a lot of value from you today, and we'll make sure that it's very entertaining for all of us. Shayamal ji, the first question which our team has got us is, every human has multiple biomarkers. It's like CGPA of the body, it's your marks of the body. What are biomarkers at its core, and what biomarkers we should track to live a healthy life?
Yes, such a fascinating question to start with. And firstly, thank you for getting me back. I loved our conversation last time. We were a little rushed, but I'm delighted to be back. Biomarkers for everyone listening are basically signals that come out of the human body that are indicators of how healthy a particular function, organ, or system in your body is. That's what it is. So for example, if you look at heart rate, it's not just an indicator of the health of your heart. It's an indicator of the health of your entire cardiorespiratory system. So oxygen coming in, pumping, how the heart's using, everything comes into it. So it's an indicator of all of that. So firstly, remember, a biomarker is an indicator of the health of a system. This is why athletes use it, because predominantly we looked at the physiology as a very, very predisposing factor to how someone performed. Now, what are examples of biomarkers? You can look at sleep as a biomarker, total sleep time, latency, deep sleep, REM sleep. These are all markers within sleep. You can look at heart rate variability, which is the electrical conductivity between heartbeats. Then you can look at resting heart rate, which is the beats per minute. And then you can look at ambient heart rate, which is our heart rate as we are sitting here. Then respiratory rate, the number of breaths that you take in a minute. All of these are biomarkers in some shape and form. If you look into physiology of athletes, we look at other markers, like for example, lean muscle mass ratio is an interesting marker to look at. Then we can quantify certain things like power output, like VO2 max, which are also markers that indicate how healthy or how strong a system is. Now, for everyone listening out there, what are the things that you should be tracking, or what are the most important ones? The first question that you need to answer is, where do you want to go? What is your goal? Your goal will determine the type of markers that we want to track.
So the goal number one is, I want to level up in my life and I want to perform way more than I'm performing right now. That is goal one. What markers I should track, and what should be the benchmark, and how to measure it basically?
Great question. So the first most important thing is that, let's just take heart rate, resting heart rate. Okay, resting heart rate is an indicator of your heartbeat when you're at absolute rest. This will go up by about 10 to 12 beats as soon as you stand up. Okay. Now, when you're looking at resting heart rate, the average sedentary person should have a resting heart rate of around 60 to 65. Elite athletes are sub 45. If you're an elite athlete, you're sub 45. If you're an elite endurance athlete, you could be in the region of about 30 to 32, 33, as low as that, right? But for the average sedentary person, I tell them aim for about 65. How do you get there? You get there by doing cardiovascular exercise, moderate to vigorous, twice a week, or thrice a week. You get there by watching the food you eat and by maintaining a good lean muscle mass to body weight ratio. Now, why is resting heart rate important? Resting heart rate is something that ensures that your range, your capacity to increase is significantly larger. Now, there's a certain formula, and we're going to go into a little bit technical details here. The way to calculate maximum heart rate is very simple. You take 220 minus your age. So if you take a 40-year-old individual, average age of a corporate person, 220 minus 40 is 180. 180 is his maximum heartbeat. Okay? So if someone has a resting heart rate of 100, 180 minus 100 means he's only got 80 beats in the range. But if he has a resting heart rate of 50, 180 minus 50 means he's got 130 beats, right? Which means the range for him to do more is far greater to push himself. It also means that the heart is getting more rest. It's getting 30 beats per minute more rest than the average heart, which means that the difference between 50 and 100 in a year is that the heart of someone resting at 50 is probably getting almost a month's rest. It's literally gone on holiday for a month while someone else is working. So think of it like that. Now that's the simple, most basic one. For an average person who wants to level up in life, the biggest factor that impacts all of us is stress. Right? Stress is external. It's not fight or flight. It's not an animal chasing you. It's entirely perceptional, entirely cognitive and psychological right now. The next interesting variable is called heart rate variability. And this is where most people get it confused. Resting heart rate needs to be lower. Heart rate variability needs to be higher, right? They need to be completely opposite of each other. So whilst I'm saying you should aim for a resting heart rate of about 60 to 65, you need to aim for a heart rate variability above 65.
What is HRV, like heart rate variability?
HRV is the electrical conductivity between beats. Right? It's the activity that's happening between beats. It's the peaks, the troughs, the HR, and it's letting us understand the strength of the electrical conductivity each beat is releasing in a heart. That's the simplest way to explain it. And the higher your HRV, the more resilient you are, the stronger the conductivity of the heart is, and the more resilient you are to manage everything around there. So what we look at from HRV is the higher the HRV is, the more equipped you are to manage emotional, cognitive, and psychological stress in the day. So you want to track that number early in the morning. And if you wear any wearable device, there's a good chance you'll get an HRV score. Now, HRV is a very, very noisy signal, which means when you get one number, it's indicative of the HRV signal during deep sleep, which is the time when you're most rested. So if your HRV signal is below 50, that means you are low at the best time that we tracked you. You know, so you want to get it as high as possible, because if you start your day high, that means you're more resilient throughout the day and you last longer. A person who starts with the HRV of 30 is going to be triggered by any stress that hits him as early as 10 o'clock. But someone who starts his day off at 90, 95 is going to be emotionally resilient, is going to be able to have a lot more willpower and be able to manage a lot more external stresses till much later in the day. So that's another interesting biomarker to track.
How do we improve HRV?
So HRV will be improved by a few things. One is we need to stimulate the parasympathetic nervous system, the system that calms you down. So the few things you need is you can use your breath, right? So being in control of your respiratory rate, lowering your respiratory rate to below, I'd say 10 breaths per minute or 8 breaths per minute will significantly raise your HRV. So just being conscious and focused and aware of your breath. The second is good sleep. You know, good sleep is also a primary driver of high HRV scores. These two combine together to raise that HRV score. But remember, the HRV score being raised is the foundation of you now using other tools to increase your awareness. It doesn't necessarily mean your focus ability is up. It just means that you've got the raw materials in place to be mentally focused on a particular task when you need to, or be mentally aware of everything happening to you. But awareness and focus also needs to be trained, just like any other variable out there. So, completing the loop on this here with biomarkers. For everyone out there, to simplify it, if I had to give you one marker to track, biomarker, I'd say track your HRV. Because there's so much of stress in the world through media, through news, through work, through pressure, through family, through chronic disease, through whatever it is, that if you start with a high HRV, right, then you'll be more resilient to all of this. And also you'll start to understand the impact of alcohol, poor sleep, poor diet on HRV. They will all raise and drop your HRV significantly. The other thing I like people to do, which is even simpler than HRV if you don't have a wearable tech, is get a bathroom scale and weigh yourself at the exact same time every single day. Why am I asking you to do this? Because when you have one data point, you can connect every decision in a 24-hour cycle to that particular data point. So you understand, I ate this food, I didn't sleep, I partied, I consumed so much of alcohol, I worked so late, I had an interesting conversation, I had a fight with... So you can connect every single thing to a particular data point and you'll see micro shifts in it. So if you can't track HRV, track your weight. These are the simplest, two easiest things for us to track.
Yeah, in the last podcast, you said a very beautiful thing, which I have also started doing, like track one variable a day.
Correct.
And track it on the same time, like keep external conditions very same and do it daily. It's a very good CETA. When it comes to HRV, let's say I have equipment, let's go more into HRV because it's not very much talked about in the ecosystem. How can I, one is sleep, one is breathe, focus on exhalation, that helps in improving HRV. One is obviously do not drink alcohol, like smoke cigarettes. What other, let's say I'm a person who has sleep issue and I'm a person who also drinks and smokes, for example, this TG. How can they improve HRV without compromising on sleep and HRV, without compromising on that habit?
Okay, let's break it down, right? So you asked an interesting question. If you have a bad lifestyle, if you are impacted by stress, you are a chronic smoker, maybe you consume alcohol 4 to 5 times a week, what is it that you can do? So the first thing everyone should understand and know, if you are not getting 7 to 8 hours of sleep per night, no supplement, nothing's going to help you. Okay. Right? You are a ticking time bomb. Why am I saying this? Because sleep is the #1 recovery tool in your arsenal. Every single problem you have is going to accentuate if your sleep is diminishing. First thing. So, if you're tracking your HRV, great, right? If the HRV score is low, whether you're consuming alcohol, whether you're smoking, whether you have chronic stress, whatever it is, the first primary thing you have to make sure is you are getting 7 hours of sleep minimum, right? Between 7 to 9 is optimum. Your mobility rate could go up. Mobility could go up by about 30% if you sleep longer than 9 hours. So 7 to 9 hours is optimal. That's the first thing. Now, let's assume you are getting 7.5 to 8 hours, but your HRV is significantly low as well. Now, what we need to do is we need to start the day with a slightly raised HRV, and there's certain things we can do. Let's assume you wake up and that score is 30. Not great, not ideal. The first 5 minutes that you wake up is critically important. In those 5 minutes there, you need to consciously focus on your breath and long, slow exhalation. And if you can't do a long, slow exhalation, just hold your breath. Just exhale and hold your breath for a minute or 45 seconds. And repeat that 3 times, and there'll be a significant jump in your HRV score. Now, remember, if you start the day at 30, you're going to have to do this 1 minute breath hold at least 3 times in the day. Why? Because you're going to need to boost the score up over the duration of the day. If you start the day at 90, you may only need to do this breath hold at 5 o'clock in the afternoon because you're so resilient throughout the day. First thing. Now, if you are someone who is a chronic smoker, for example, right, using a breathwork technique like an exhalation hold is phenomenal because why? It's also strengthening the lungs. It's also teaching the lungs how to expel CO2 from it. It's teaching how to that hold is stimulating the parasympathetic nervous system, which is phenomenal, and the vagus nerve. So it's actually calming you down quite significantly. And as you exhale, the HRV score jumps up, which also makes you feel a little more resilient to taking care of anything else. Now, the nicotine is addictive, and it's making you feel like I need to repeat that process over and over. But the truth is that if you just repeat the exhalation, you'll be equally equipped to deal with anything that life throws you. So the first thing, make sure you get 7.5 to 8 hours of sleep. The second thing is the exhalation. Start the day. Now, there's an interesting thing we do in sport. We tell people the last step you take in the night is equivalent to the first step you take in the morning.
Wow.
Which means that let's assume you have gone out, you've partied, you've done everything, right? How you fall asleep in the night is directly proportional to how you'll wake up. If you've had an argument and you fight and you're stressed in the night, you'll wake up stressed in the morning. So you can end your day by just taking a minute and bringing your mind calmly down to rest, and your score will jump up. It's independent of the amount of alcohol. Even if we've done this, we've seen studies where people have consumed alcohol, drunk everything, but one person's mindfully gone to sleep. And we've seen that their score is significantly raised as to a person who's just passed out. Now, what I would encourage people to do is just bring their mind to rest very slowly in the night. That's it, and you can say to yourself, I give myself permission to push aside everything and just fall asleep. I give myself permission to calm down. I give myself permission to relax and be at rest. I give myself permission to surrender to my breath. Just these few simple sentences, which will take 10 seconds in the night, will bring you to rest. You'll find that HRV score will be jumping up quite significantly. And then the last thing is be conscious of the food you're eating and the nutrition. Because oily food, really spicy food, really heavy food is going to impact your digestive system. And HRV that's stimulating the parasympathetic nervous system and the vagus system is directly connected to our rest and digestion system. So if that is highly stimulated, it's going to pull you down. So keeping the food lighter will really help you throughout the day and manage it.
Very interesting. I was reading stomach is called second brain.
Correct.
Because it directly influences how our real brain functions. What can I eat in my, let's say, breakfast or lunch or dinner that my diet is such that it pushes HRV naturally in a better state?
What can you eat that pushes your HRV? So what I would tell people is generally as a rule of thumb, you want to eat your fresh vegetables, your fresh fruits in the morning because they take a longer time to digest, even your greens and stuff. Greens, fresh vegetables, fruits in the night are not great. One is they spike the blood glucose level, right, because of the carbohydrate in it, but the fiber content takes a long time to digest. So if you're eating it in the night, it's going to impact sleep drastically. The second thing I'm a big proponent of is really keeping the body in some sort of a fasted state. Maybe not 18 hours, maybe not 16 hours, but don't wake up and eat immediately because you don't really need it. So be in some sort of fasted state in the morning because that's very good. It's good for the health of the gut. It's good for the brain. It's good for the body. It allows the body to start into the day. And there's beautiful research around caffeine. They found that people who have caffeine in the first 120 minutes of waking up consume significantly more caffeine throughout the day. If you restrict yourself from drinking caffeine within the first 120 minutes of waking up, your caffeine consumption gets reduced by almost 60% throughout the day. You don't need it. So it's not so much about what to eat. It's about being more mindful about the times we're eating and the quantities we're eating. Quantity is actually the biggest thing that impacts our health. So a lot of people are under this fallacy that if I'm eating healthy, I can eat any amount of it. Remember, it's the quality of the food is significantly important, but it's the quantity of the food that impacts us more than the quality. Okay, which means that you can eat something really, really healthy, but if you eat copious amounts, it's going to impact the system negatively, as opposed to eating a little bit of something that maybe is not so great for you, because you've allowed the body, you've kept a little bit of satiety in there, but you've also allowed it to, you've given it the time and energy to break it down, and you've given enough energy to function with the other systems in the body.
Very interesting. I was also reading this about why mindful eating is important. So it said that when you see your food and you feel your food, the food is registered in the head more. When you blindly eat your food, it's not registered enough. So brain doesn't know what to do. It some chemical reactions happening. So it's better to eat very mindfully. And I've also noticed in my personal life, if I'm eating mindfully, I'll eat less. If I count the number of chews, how many chews per spoon, if I see the color, what's the gradient in the food, like what's the color gradient. So all involving senses, smell it more. More we involve the senses, more mindful we are when... Correct.
You mentioned something, you asked me something earlier on around what are the things people can do. Now, I'm part of a teaching team at Stanford Business School, and we teach a module called the Neuroscience of Exemplary Leadership. One exercise that we teach there is called the bliss narrative, which is thinking about a happy memory that will invoke that state in you and that will raise your heart rate variability. So we call it a bliss narrative, something very, very simple. Really interesting anecdotes have come out from running this through multiple cohorts. When you ask someone to fictionally create a bliss narrative, something that invokes a sense of calm in them, one of two incidences pop up. They're either walking on a beach or they're walking in nature.
Wow.
Right? The exact same two. So if I ask you to think of any situation, fictionally create it, that makes you feel calm, the first is you walking on a beach, the second is you walking in nature. And these are the only two that people come up with.
Wow.
But if you ask someone to create a real life example, a non-fictional example from their life that invokes a sense of happiness, it always inadvertently will have food at it. Why? Because food triggers emotion, and emotion is linked to nostalgia. So remembering something, any incident, you think about it, any incident that you are truly blissful about. I remember when I'm talking about Diwali, growing up with my grandparents and my family and 50 people coming together, inadvertently, what we remember is the types of food we ate and how we do it. When I go back to South Africa, I'm looking to recreate those same experiences, because food is very, very strongly linked to nostalgia, and nostalgia recreates the emotion. So mindful eating that you said is not just about being here. It's about the registry of memories that you're creating that are going to hold you in a healthy state for the rest of your life. That's the thing. Every time you're not mindfully present when you're eating, you're robbing yourself of a quality memory that could be the pin in the ground that pulls you back from any trauma you're experiencing back to bliss.
We call it memory dividends.
Memory dividends.
Yeah.
Exactly. So people are unaware of it like this. They're not thinking about it like this.
Yeah.
But when you start to realize how much you're depriving yourself by being distracted whilst eating in particular, then you realize, oh my God, I'm restricting my bank of nostalgia, my bank of memories. And if I'm ever going to be thrown off by any external variables, that bank's very, very small.
Just a very random question I'm going to ask, very random. I've been reading on study of genes and probability of a person's physical structure, right? So I was reading that, let's say I'm born in Madhya Pradesh, for example. and I do my gene test, and it says that uh, I'm 30% Arabian, 40%
Sure.
US, 10% Madhya Pradesh, 20% let's say West Bengal. Uh, I should not eat local because I'm more like dietary. I'm more like Arabian, for example.
Yeah.
So any new studies, anything? I don't know if how this gene. If there's content on how to go more deep into this gene analysis of diet and lifestyle.
Fantastic. So the studies you're quoting are the relationship between the ecosystem and your genes. So it's genetics versus epigenetics.
Correct.
And when you look at these two here, generally most studies conclude that 70% is epigenetics, which is your ecosystem, and 30% is genetics. Now remember, every gene, so you're talking about the ancestry of where you're born. I have Mughal blood, Arabian blood, Caucasian blood, African blood. I have all of this, or this ancestry in me. So should I eat in accordance with that? That's the first thing. But remember, there's another layer to it where you could also say, I am predisposed to having a cardiovascular disease. Right? That's also a gene, that's also a genetic marker. But does that mean you're going to get a heart attack? No. It means that if you eat the wrong foods consistently, yes, you will get. Which means the wrong foods consistently and a high stress lifestyle is going to allow that gene to express. So the environment creates the expressing potential of a gene. So which means if I take that environment out, this gene expression or this trigger will not release. Right? We all understand, we all have accepted that. We know that yes, I belong in a family that has Alzheimer's and Parkinson's or cardiovascular disease or cholesterol or diabetes, but if I maintain a healthy lifestyle, I will never get it. We understand that. We've accepted that. Similarly, when we look at the ancestry components of it, right, the epigenetics is far greater than the genetics. Yes, you may have 10% Mughal, 10% Arabian, or whatever it is. But remember, you grew up in a certain environment. The altitude, the quality of the air, the locally grown produce, all of that has created a far greater impression on your growth and development than just your pure, untapped, unreleased gene expression. You know? So to anyone who's thinking about these two things, the quality of where you are, your environment, is far greater an impact on how you live your health and who you become than you trying to mimic something that has the potential of expressing, because it's unsustainable.
Correct.
It's completely unsustainable. Let's assume you have 10%, Arabian in you, as you gave an example. How are you going to create an ecosystem or eat the same food that triggers that? And how long are you going to do that? It's not one meal. It has to happen consistently. Yeah? And consistently means you need to rewrite that entire ecosystem first. So the first thing I'll tell everyone is be really mindfully present about everything in your environment. And we see this in athletes a lot. The greatest Kenyan marathon runners are the greatest because A, genetics, they have longer limbs, they have thinner calf muscles, we've seen greater explosive power, but we've also seen that they train in Eton, which is at 3,000 meters above sea level. So the altitude is there. We also see that they have the greatest ecosystem around them. We see that they're highly diligent. We see all of these things coming in and creating it. It's not just their genetic potential. Many studies have been done where they've taken these Kenyan athletes and put them into another ecosystem with what we deemed world-class facilities, but yet we didn't produce the same results. So everything is a combination. Everything's a myriad. It's very difficult to pull one thing out and say, hey, listen, this is the key. This is going to make the difference. It's not food. It's not ecosystem. It's not altitude. It's every single thing.
In our entire podcast, the concept of sleep is coming again and again. Let's say if I'm a person who can't sleep, what can I do? Like, there are melatonins, there are some tablets you can take. I don't know. But what do you recommend so that I can solve for sleep?
Okay. So there are a few things that you can Check. Firstly, if you have a condition like sleep apnea, then I would strongly advise you to see a doctor. And actually, I would strongly advise you to see a dentist to start us with, or an orthodontist, because there's a lot of research around using certain types of mouth guards that can help with sleep apnea, or looking at dental structures and how that contributes to sleep apnea. There's a lot of research around that. So I'd strongly advise you to look there. Let's assume you don't have one of these conditions and you just struggle with sleep. There's certain things that deter sleep. Firstly is light exposure. If there's a lot of external light coming up, it will disturb sleep and wake you up. There was research that showed a 0.5 millimeter LED light pointed on a calf muscle, right, was proven to disturb sleep in individuals.
Wow.
Exactly. Not even in the eyes, just pointed on your calf was proven to disturb sleep. So LED lights in the room, street lights coming in, your charger lights, all of these things here have the potential to disturb sleep. So if you're someone who's sensitive to light, the cheapest thing to do, it's even free if you get it in an airline, is an eye mask. Make any cloth, just cover your eyes, limit the exposure to light, your sleep could improve significantly. The second big deterrent to sleep is sound. Any changes in decibels, right, will wake you up, which means if there's a constant humming, you'll sleep through it. But once that humming switches off, you'll wake up because it's dropped. Once a loud noise goes above that, you'll wake up. So sound is the second biggest deterrent to sleep. So what you need to do is get basic wax or foam earplugs, put them in there, and you'll find the quality of your sleep could improve. The third deterrent is temperature. Many of us have experienced, we wake up and we toss in because it's too hot. Or maybe you have the AC on and the electricity shuts off and the temperature goes up and you wake up. Any fluctuations in temperature will also deter sleep. And we've seen that the optimum temperature to sleep in is 19 to 20 degrees Celsius, right? In India, very rarely can we achieve 19 degrees without an air conditioner, right? So make sure you've got an air conditioner, keeping it cool, you'll have a significantly better sleep. So light, sound, and temperature are the three predetermining factors to good sleep. If you can control these three things here, the quality of your sleep will go up significantly. Then comes into nutrition. Remember, the circadian rhythm has taught us that your body's digestive system will shut down at 10 o'clock, which means that you've got a 2-hour window to finish eating so that the digestion process is complete. If you eat at 9:30, 10, you're going to have a disturbed sleep because your body's digestive system has shut down, melatonin production is starting, and as your body is trying to sleep, it's not trying to break down food. So you've created an internal disruption in your own. So try to get your meals done by 7:30 to 8 so that you've got a 2-hour window for digestion to happen. And when that digestion happens, you can get restful sleep. Now remember, we have 5 sleep cycles per night that we need to go through. Each sleep cycle could be anywhere between 82 minutes and about 94, 95 minutes, depending on who you are. This is why some people need 7 hours and some people need 8 hours, 15 minutes, right? And that's what it is. But remember, your deepest and most rejuvenative sleep cycle is sleep cycle 4 and 5. If you go to bed at 1 a.m. and you're waking up at 7 or 8, you're not even getting to the best part of your sleep, the sleep cycle that rejuvenates the same. There's a big fallacy in that you're thinking all sleep cycles are exactly the same. That is not true, right? The quality of rejuvenation that happens in cycle 4 and cycle 5 is significantly greater and more significant than what happens in your first sleep cycle. Your body's coming to rest. So getting to bed at the same time every single day, about 10 o'clock, gives you enough time to get 7 hours, to get 5 sleep cycles and completely rejuvenate. Now, how do you bring yourself to that is a completely different subject and how we do that. Getting rid of your digital devices, not getting any external stimulation. Wi-Fi. Switch it off, yeah. All of that. So you're reducing your EMF. But another interesting thing I tell people is in India, we have this obsession with spotlights. You know, every house you walk into has like at least 24 spotlights in the ceiling, you know. So it looks like daylight all the time.
Yeah.
I tell everyone, you know, at 7 p.m. when the sun goes down, don't use spotlights. Actually put lamps. You want light to come from bottom up.
Wow.
Light that comes from top down will awaken the brain. Light that comes from bottom up will promote sleep.
Wow.
Just a simple thing like this, just creating light from bottom up will help you fall asleep faster.
It's cozy also, I mean.
It's cozy. It's warm. Even the warmer lights, changing it from white to yellow will make a significant difference. In fact, we've seen red light promotes the deepest sleep. So having some exposure to a red light lamp or red light in your room really and truly promotes, just dulls down, stimulates the parasympathetic nervous system, dulls that sympathetic nervous system, allows you to sleep. So these are a few very, very simple things. This is not even touching supplementation, not even touching melatonin or magnesium or anything. And I want everyone to know that before you go and buy melatonin and buy expensive magnesium threonate and all of these things, do what is free and what is in your control. Because that supplement is not going to work in the presence of so much of stimulus.
Correct.
You know, the first thing you have to do is carve out the stimulus. Cut, 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 cut. Subtract before you add.
Yeah.
That's our mantra that we use. Subtract before you add. Before you think of what should I buy, what should I add, ask yourself, what is it that I need to get rid of?
Yeah. Subtraction is evolutionary very hard. I mean, I read about problem solving through subtraction and problem solving through addition. We are wired to solve a problem by adding. Right. It's very important to ask ourselves before solving, what can I subtract? And all the things you mentioned, I just want to know, is it red light or orange light?
Red.
Red. But doesn't it gives you a signal that there's emergency or?
No, we've now used that as a way, but a flashing red light will trigger some sort of signal that there's danger in there. Right. But a constant red light lamp over a period of time will bring the mind to rest.
Okay.
Yeah.
It needs to be down. That's
down.
The most important
yes, not
part.
up. Correct.
Yeah. And so we spend 1/3 of our life on the mattress.
Correct.
We sleep 8 hours.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
So there's lots of beautiful technologies that's come out. There's a company called, I think, 8Pod or Sleep 8 that's now regulates the temperature of the mattress itself. Phenomenal technology. I've used it when I was traveling abroad. It's brilliant. Keeps the bed cool. You can split the temperature up because females generally like warmer conditions to sleep in. Males prefer cooler conditions. And if you're sleeping as a couple on the same mattress, one person's having a problem at all times. This allows you to regulate it differently.
In the same mattress?
On the same mattress. You can have half a bed in this temperature and the other half with a completely different temperature. You know, so that's a beautiful technology. So the mattress is significantly important. You know, the firmness, the temperature, all of these things, even the breathability of the material that you're using plays a significant impact. The next most important thing, I would say is the first most important thing, is actually the pillow. Okay. The pillow is the one thing with my professional athletes that we try to standardize. We do a pillow analysis. We look at how they sleep. We look at the curvature of their neck resting on the pillow. Once we get the perfect pillow, we get them to buy 3 or 4 of those. Keep it everywhere and pack that when they're traveling. Because that's the one thing that your head is in contact with for 8 hours in the night. If that is wrong, think of the amount of times you've gone to a hotel and the pillow is too soft or too big or too uncomfortable and you tossed the entire night. You know, or the bed was too soft and you kept rolling and rolling and rolling and rolling. Disturbed sleep. Or the room was too warm or the room was too cold. Everything I'm talking to you, you have experienced as a disturbance to sleep. You've just not been mindfully aware of trying to fix it. You know? So when I walk into a hotel room or my athletes walk into a hotel room, the first things we try to do is we make sure that our curtains are blackout blinds. We make sure that we have control and all of the lights, including the night light. Most hotels will have a night light to ensure that you can walk in. We make sure that that night light is switched off. We disconnect, we unplug the TV because the TV is right in front of you and it'll have an LED screen. We unplug that TV from there. We make sure we set the temperature at 20 degrees. You know, We can put it off in the day, but in the night we put it on. We make sure that we phone and get the right pillows, or if we've carried our own pillow, we use that, we swap it out. These are simple things we can do. And then another interesting thing is most people use really tight clothing. If you use restrictive clothing, it's going to disturb blood circulation and it's going to impact sleep. How do you know you have restrictive clothing? Is if you wake up in the morning and you can feel or see that elastic band impression on your skin, your clothing's too tight. It needs to be completely loose, completely non-restrictive.
Or should we not wear clothes? I mean, should we wear clothes while sleeping?
I sleep naked.
Same.
And the thing is that I find it's easier to regulate the temperature. It's easy. I feel way more comfortable. I feel like the skin can breathe. If you're using good mattresses, all of these things, it contributes significantly to it. So not everyone's comfortable with it. If you're not comfortable sleeping naked, then I feel you need to use really, really non-restrictive, loose fabrics or loose clothing.
For women, should they wear undergarments while sleeping?
I don't think anyone should wear, unless you have a medical condition where you're wearing, or it's that you have a period cycle where you need to wear a pad or something like that, then, you can be completely free. But most people, like I said, are not comfortable with it. Just make sure that it's not tight. You can wear anything. It's not about not wearing versus wearing. It's about restrictive versus non-restrictive. Yeah.
Very interesting. There's so many things. I just want to know, I want to buy that pillow. Let's say I want to buy the pillow that's good for my neck. How can I buy it? From where will I know?
Yeah, there's lots of companies in different countries. In the US, there's a company called Pillow, for example, that just specializes in these here. Now, remember, doing a pillow analysis is not about buying these orthopedic pillows that are foams. That's completely different. That's a standard one that you can get from anywhere. It works for some people. A pillow analysis is done where you're literally going and they're doing a scientific analysis of watching you sleep, measuring the size of the head, measuring the curvature of the neck, the size of the shoulders, the positions you sleep in, all of these things. So it's very, very scientific.
So much to do in sleep. So many bucket lists I've made in my head. I'll for sure.
Sleep is the holy grail.
Yeah.
Sleep is the holy grail of recovery.
Yeah.
And, recovery is such a beautiful science. I love it. I specialize. I spend so much of time trying to understand the subject, from the nutrition to the quality of sleep, to the quality of training, everything. Why? Because athletes spend 70% of the time recovering.
Yeah.
But in that 30%, they give off everything.
I'll take a very different topic from here. I was exploring, I read about, there's this new epidemic, myopia epidemic that is happening. In China, right now, I think 90% of the kids, don't quote me on number, but 90% of the kids will have glasses. Because of this, they have national security issue, because a lot of people cannot be part of Air Force. Right, because they need a very sharp eye, and then it has impact on sports, because sports are a very important thing. Lot of things, right? And sunlight has been considered to be the most important part to improve your eyesight, is the latest reading. What do you tell us everything about eyesight, eye health, whatever you know? Just
I love this subject. I began my sports science career working with the KwaZulu-Natal Dolphins in South Africa and the South African cricket team. This was back in 1997, 1998. I worked with someone by the name of Professor Kovan Naidu, who was the head of department, the professor of ophthalmology at the University of Durban, Westville. And over the course of about 3 to 5 years, we created an entire manual, an entire dossier as such on eye health for professional athletes. We screened professional athletes back in 1997, 1998 for almost, I would say, about 25 to 30 ophthalmic conditions and variables that are required for performance. Everyone who does an eye test, when you go to an optometrist, you're doing what's called a visual acuity test that is static. You're sitting on a chair, can you read this number? Yeah. That's not the reality for sports. So we were looking at static, then we're looking at dynamic, where you're on something that's constantly moving and looking at how well you read it. Then we're looking at something where the numbers are moving and how well can you focus. Then we look at, in sport, you've got to look at a bowler 22 feet away and then hit the contact under your eyes. So we look at how quickly can the eyes adjust. This is called accommodative resistance. Then we look at glare. How well do you see under sunlight? How well do you see under artificial light? How well do you see different types of colors? 25 to 30 different variables we were studying back in 1997. Why? Because eye health is significantly important to performance in any shape and form. Now, let's look at the neuroscience of this. Your brain will use 25% of the energy the body uses in a day is just consumed by your brain. That goes up significantly if you have an eye condition. And we've seen this with chronic fatigue, and we've seen this with mental tension. How? Because a simple thing like this, just a 0.5 difference in visual acuity between the left and right eye means that the brain has to work significantly harder to synchronize two images, because you've got two images that are coming in with completely different visual acuities, and the brain has to bring it together to create one image the entire day. It's taking a significant amount of burden. So we've noticed that just a 0.5 degree difference in the visual acuity between the left and right eye significantly compromises your ability to stay focused over a prolonged period of time. We even test for this. This is why I tell all athletes, get your eyes checked and make sure if you need to use contact, whatever you need to do, they have to be exactly the same. The optometrist may not tell you this here, but from a neuroscience point of view, we're able to see the impact of this difference in your ability to focus over a prolonged period of time. Wow. Yeah. So I understand how this is playing out as a national security issue in China, and it'll play out in multiple issues throughout everywhere. I remember back in 1997, we had a cricketer who was amazing. His name was Ashraf Mal. This was 1997. Scoring a phenomenal amount of runs. He went on, he played for South Africa A. He was a star player for the Dolphins. Every time the ball went up in the air, he would drop the catch. Right, every time. And he was dropping easy catches, but no one could understand why. And I remember we took him into the lab and we looked at it, because we realized he would score hundreds of runs, but he would drop every catch in the outfield. So we looked at it. First, we thought it was the artificial light, but the same thing was happening also in daylight. And we realized, okay, what's happening? If the ball's hit flat at him, he'll catch it. Then using sports science, we quantified everything. We looked at, it will take 300ths to 400ths of a second for the ball from a bowler to reach a batter. In 400ths of a second, you don't have to blink. If a ball's hit flat at you in the infield, anywhere between 200ths and 500ths of a second, it will reach you. It'll cover 30 to 40 meters and you'll catch it. You don't need to blink for 300ths. But if the ball shoots up and comes back down, it's anywhere between 5 to about 10 seconds. In 5 to 10 seconds, you have to blink 3 or 4 times. So we realized right there and then that every time he blinked, the problem was there. Wow. Now we went under the microscope and we looked at it. And Ashraf Mal had, his tear ducts were slightly, fractionally larger than the average person, which means his eye was draining quicker, right? Which means he needed to blink more, because your eye needs hydration. So if your eyes are dry, you'll blink a lot more. And because his eyes were draining a lot more, he blinked a lot more. And I remember back in 1997, we took him under a procedure. We put in microscopic collagen plugs to plug those tear ducts, to allow the eyes to stay more hydrated, and we completely sorted out this problem. Wow. This was the way we approached eye health for performance, literally more than 2 decades ago. And it's still, the sad thing is, it's still one of the most neglected components of sports performance.
Yeah. This becomes very, very important nowadays when students who are giving competitive exams like GMAT and everything. So they have to read very fast, solve puzzles. That requires great mind and eye coordination.
Correct.
And the dryness, all that thing will happen very fast. There will be so many people who don't know that even after they are working so hard, there's an issue with the hardware.
Yeah.
Wow, man. That's, how can I...
And digital screens dry your eyes even faster.
Faster, correct.
White light, looking at screens, they dry your eyes even faster. You'll see if you're looking at a screen for a long time, you are after a while you start blinking. So what is it that you need to do? The first thing everyone needs to do for eye health, everyone, whether you're an athlete or not, is you need to keep a bottle of saline drops with you. Tear, basic clean saline for the eyes, tear drops. And 3 to 4 times a day, you need to put a drop in there. Wow. Because there's too much of light around us, there's too much of stimulus. If you're in India, there's so much of dust going in there. All of this is impacting the health of your eyes. Okay, so keep some drops in there. It lubricates the eyes. Now remember, your eye is a lens. Okay, and that lens, the aperture increases and decreases. How? On the basis of muscles that are holding onto it. So those muscles need to expand and contract. Now, everyone knows, why do you drink water every day, especially if you're training for a sport? You know that if I don't drink water, I'm going to get dehydrated. If I'm going to get dehydrated, my muscle's going to tear. But we've not connected the dots between what's happening in your leg and what's happening in your eye. If your eye is dehydrated from looking at the screen, the exact same thing's happening. You know, so your eye muscles are fatigued. Your eye muscles are not being able to expand properly. And this is why you have a health problem. Because it's the basic mechanical structure that's operating the lens is not functioning properly. So a simple thing like just putting 3 drops at different intervals in the day will significantly increase the health of your eyes.
Wow. What else can I do? Like, what simpler things? I mean, carrying it's important, but
I mean, the eye drop is the simplest thing you can do. And then the next one is an exercise. The more you do that, right, the quicker you're able to make that adjustment, and you've trained your eye. Training your eye is exactly like training any other muscle in your body. You know, this is something that athletes don't do. I remember for the longest time, it's so sad because I watch so many cricketers whose career comes to a sort of plateau or a downfall at about 35, 40. This is the age when these issues start to precipitate. And if you're in the sun for a significant amount of time, it's going to happen much quicker. Yeah. Simple things like this, just these little exercises here can make a massive difference. I remember when South Africa, I'm proudly South African, and you know, our rugby team is amazing. So statistically, our rugby team are the only sports team in any World Cup to win 50% of the World Cups we've participated in. We participated in 8 rugby World Cups, we've won 4. But I remember when we won the very, very famous World Cup where Francois Pienaar was the captain and Mandela brought the World Cup in there, the big one that Invictus is made of. We had a sports vision specialist that worked with the players. And I remember we had one particular player that had a color blindness with the colors blue and green. And the Rugby World Cup symbol was only blue and green. So he was the main kicker, and the contact he was making with the ball wasn't perfect. So we had to train the brain. We couldn't change the ball. So what we did over a period of time, the sports vision specialist stuck tiny pieces of different color paper that his eye could see on different parts of the ball and reprogrammed his brain how to see that ball when he was kicking it. And that's how we won the World Cup. We retrained the brain how to see something that we could not change. And this is really interesting because that's the neuroplasticity of the brain. You can teach it anything.
Yeah, we need to talk a lot about eye health on internet. I was reading that if you put your finger like this far, yes, and then bring it closely, yes, and focus on the tip, do it till it hurts, and then again do it.
Yes.
Is it a good exercise for that?
It's good, but remember, the eye needs to adjust before and after 3 meters. Okay. So this exercise is great, but you're still in the same range.
Correct.
Right. So it's great for this distance here, but most of us need to look beyond, and before 3 meters, I need to see someone far away, and I need to look close, or I need to see the bus arriving from down the road, and then jump on it here.
Correct.
You know, so it's that distance that we need to constantly train. This is a great exercise. Yeah. Even similar, you can do peripheral vision. So I'm looking at you and I'm moving this to the side, to the side, to the side. I'm looking at you, and how far can I move it where it's still in my peripheral vision while I'm still looking? So I'm getting up to here, and about here it starts to disappear. So this is where my peripheral vision is. Now I can do the same thing on this side here while looking at you looking at you, looking at you, looking at you, looking at you, and I'm there. And then I'm looking, okay, this is my peripheral vision on the left and right is exactly the same. Generally, it shouldn't be, because we all have a dominant eye and a non-dominant eye. In sport, one of the first things we do, very interesting exercise, keep your hands like this, both hands like this, keep it in the middle, and I want you to look at this finger with both eyes. Both eyes. So bring your hands in the middle, keep it like that, move it slightly away, move it slightly away from you, move it and look at it with both eyes. Look at this finger with both eyes. Right, now blink your right eye.
No, I can't see.
You can't see it. Now blink your left eye. Can you see it?
Yeah.
So if you can see it with your left eye, that means you're left eye dominant.
Wow.
Right. So this is how we determine dominance. So everyone who does this here, you just make it like a tunnel. You look at a structure with both eyes through the tunnel. With one eye, when you blink it, you will be able to see it. With the other eye, you won't be able to see it. And that's an indication of how you test what's your eye dominance. Now, your eye dominance receives way more information than your non-dominant eye, just like we have a dominant hand and a dominant leg. Now, in sport, what we try to teach people to do is always align your dominant eye with where you're receiving information. So, for example, let's assume I am a left-handed batsman in cricket, but my left eye is my dominant eye, which means I can't maintain a purely square stance, because my dominant eye is not receiving all the information. So just by creating a micro opening of my stance a little bit, I'm aligning my dominant eye with where the information is coming in, and that's going to increase my success significantly. Same thing with golf, same thing with anything. So just these simple things, sports vision. And as a performance psychologist and a sports scientist, this is my job. My job is to look into every microscopic detail that goes into performance and how to train it. Like most people, when I'm working with golfers, a golfer is not hitting a golf ball. A golfer is hitting. If you've ever seen a golf ball, it has these little indentations on them. A golfer is hitting one indentation on a golf ball. He's not hitting the whole golf ball. A professional golfer who's winning majors is taking that one indentation, breaking up into 4 quarters, and hitting 1 quarter of one indentation on a golf ball. Wow. So his striking point, he's looking to make a strike on 0.1 millimeter on that golf ball and not the whole golf ball. Amateurs are trying to hit the golf ball. That's why it's all over the show. Footballers are not trying to kick the ball. They're trying to kick one piece of that leather on that entire ball. And even that piece is being broken down into 4 quadrants. And each quadrant that you kick will produce a completely different impact. It'll spin that ball in a completely different way. Okay. But for this requires awareness. It requires great eye health, and it requires training.
Yeah. There's so much. This field is so interesting. I mean, I'm going to do it with my friends, and I'm going to say, very interesting. I'll ask a very, very different question, right? What's your opinion on this controversy that's happening of, let's say, a XX born person playing in XY born category of the sports? How do you see it?
It is a little confusing right now, and there's a lot of controversy around it. And the controversy is coming in. It's looking at the biology of the person, the biology that they were born in, and remember, males that are going through that have gone through sex change surgeries and even hormone replacements or protocols where they've brought their body into alignment with female biology, being able to compete. We've only tested a few of these variables, and we've brought these in a line. And on the basis of that, we're saying, yes, they should be able to compete. I think the example that probably highlights the indifference more than anything else, and the reason that it's always quoted as a case, is what was Caster Semenya from South Africa as a runner, significantly, was just constantly beating all the other female athletes, which constantly brought this to the forefront in there. The truth is that I'm not pro or I'm not against it. What I am is for more research to be done, because sport is a pure meritocracy, which means that when the gun goes off to start, it's a level playing field. Okay. And it should be level completely throughout. I am for a level playing field in sport. And if there's any biological or genetic advantage that any one of these people gets from competing in a completely different environment, then that needs to be completely negated because it doesn't make it a meritocracy. And then what happens is you erode the foundation of sport in itself. That's the main principle of it. So do I feel enough research is done to warrant everyone participating? I don't think so. I don't feel enough research has been done. I feel more needs to be done for us to peel away the layers to completely understand it. Why can I say not research has been done? Is because there are numerous case examples that have proven how people who have migrated across and performed have had a significant advantage in how they performed. Right? Just that is case study. Because why? If you look at the training that they're doing, it mimics the training that every other athlete is doing in that sport. So what is the advantage? Where they're getting that advantage from needs to be understood. Yeah. Just for this here, it's very, very important for us to, I'm not saying disregard them, push them out. I'm not for that right now, but I am for more research to be done. The only problem with sport is that it's very hard to do it because most of this research is invasive. It requires drawing of bloods, it requires doing that. And you can't do invasive testing on athletes 365 days a year, or especially pre-competition in the few weeks because it impacts performance. That's some of the limiting aspects that we have in there. And I think when we look at this subject here, it's really important to not mix biology with gender preference. How you want to be known is very different from what your biology is. I could want to be known as a female, but my biology could be that of a male, right? And I have every right to want to be known and acknowledged in a certain shape and form, and that's my entire preference, right? And my biology is completely different. And I don't think that these two should come together because how I want to be seen may be completely different from what my biology is indicating, right? And I think that this is a biological conversation and not a perceptional conversation or a preference conversation, And I think once you draw that fork in the road there, you'll find more conclusive evidence on which direction we should go with.
It's very interesting field. There's so much constraint, like you can't take blood before the competition, but it's impacting there's a lot of emotion in the sports, but there's limitation to research, and there's this thing of sports is meritocracy. I have a follow-up on that word. Like, genetically, Africans will have a better muscle structure on the body that will make them genetically more competent to win races, running races, right? And let's say there are certain genes, let's say on the US side or African side, who will be taller than the counterparts on the Asian side. Correct. So they have advantage in, let's say, running, playing basketball. It's unfair advantage. Do you see future in such a way that a certain type of genes it's fair for certain types of gene to compete in that sport and then certain type of genes to compete in certain different sport?
No, I don't think the example can't come down to genetics again. Why? Because, really, really great examples. The example you mentioning of runners are Jamaica produces some of the best sprinters. You got the Usain Bolts, you got the Asafa Powells, and then yes, US has produced the Tyson Gays and examples, but traditionally we've seen more sprinters come out of Jamaica. We've seen more long distance marathon runners come out of Kenya, and in particular Eton. 94 of the top 100 fastest times in the marathon event belong to residents of one particular village. It's the largest concentration of talent. You look at middle distance and the Ethiopians completely dominate. You look at weightlifting and then you're going to the Eastern Bloc countries. Eastern Europe are completely dominating that. You go into basketball and then you're looking at, yes, maybe African Americans or anyone with a certain height doing that. Now, what's interesting is you get a Chinese basketball player who's above a certain height. What does he do? He moves immediately to the US, and that's where he actually learns to flourish, right? You get a great Mo Farah goes and train for the marathon event in Kenya, in that. It's because the ecosystem plays a fundamental point. The genetics is just your genetics is just, how do we say it? There's something really interesting. They say genetics deals the cards, the environment plays the hand.
Wow.
That's what they say. Genetics deals the card, the environment plays the hand. And that's what you have to constantly understand, is that yes, no one knew what card they were going to be dealt. But how you choose to play the hand is everything. You move into an environment where you're going to be supported, where you're going to be nurtured, where your talent's going to get the opportunity to flourish. That is critical. So if you are above 6'8", 6'9" in China and you want to be a basketball player, there's a good chance you're going to have to move across. If you're in Croatia, you're going to want to move across to the US and play basketball. If you want to be a great marathon runner, you could represent any country, but there's a good chance that your best chance of success is going to be training with the Kenyans. Wow. There. You want to be a great middle distance runner, you're not going to become a phenomenal middle distance runner sitting in Madhya Pradesh. You're going to have to get to Ethiopia where the best are training. So the ecosystem is critical for every single thing. And I'm not trying to discount genetics. Genetics will get you in there, but that's just opening the door. You're going to have to do all the hard work yourself, and that's directly from the environment.
Correct. This makes me feel sports might have certain uncontrollable variables. I mean, let's say I'm born in Mumbai in a very middle class family, and I want to become. I'm okay with certain skill, and I want to become a great sports person. It requires a lot of distribution of equity in sense of resources, knowledge to be very good, which makes me. The reason I'm saying this because I want to ask the next question. That is, let's say I'm a parent now. I have a baby. What I should do? Let's say there's some inclination in the baby, okay, that it loves playing cricket or something. How should, as a parent, I should structure the life of the kid from a nutrition point of view, from training point of view, from everything point of view, that if it has talent, it grows into, it manifests into 100% blossom. I mean, I hope I am able to explain. What should I do in parenting so that my kids are better sports people?
So if you as a parent, if one of the two parents have not played that sport professionally at the highest level and don't understand, because there's a difference between understanding the sport and there's a difference between understanding the nuance of what's needed to excel. You'll only understand the nuance of what's needed if you've coached it at the highest level or played it at the highest level. So if one of the two parents have not played it at the highest level, then the first thing you should know is that accept that you are at a disadvantage and you need to get external help in that area. Right? Why? Because just the environment that you're going to provide for that child from the time they start walking, right, till the time they turn professional and retire is going to be very different if you played it versus if you didn't play. The first thing you need to understand there. Then the second thing is, right, the level of exposure to that particular sport. Now, sport requires 4 things to be successful. You need to have physical proficiency, you need to have technical proficiency, you need to have tactical proficiency, and then you need to have mental proficiency. Most people train the physical proficiency. That's where most parents put in a lot of time. They'll get a trainer, they'll get him in the gym, they'll get him for classes, all of these things, right? They'll train the technical by getting a coach in there that's working with him and stuff like that. They don't spend enough time on the tactical and they spend very little time on the mental. Okay? So you've only ticked off 2 of the 4 blocks. If you are someone who's played the sport at the highest level, you are integrating all 4 components in the child's development right from the time they start walking. You're teaching them, the importance of holding a grip in a certain way or being able to do these small short runs. Like me as well, even with our son at home. Simple things like I know I love golf, I would like him to play golf, but simple things like I'm like, okay, when we're playing golf balls, I'll teach him, okay, you know what, every single ball, you don't empty the whole bucket. Amateurs will go, they'll empty the whole bucket in the tray and they'll just keep pulling one out. I'll tell them, no, you keep the bucket there. Every ball you pick up from the bucket in there. Why? Because I'm teaching him mindfulness. Teaching how to connect every single ball. I'm also trying to create the gap between hitting it because in golf you'll need a gap. every now and then I'll place 2 beacons. I'll say, okay, we got to do a run. Every time you hit a ball, go and run there, come back. Because I'm trying to train the condition. This is coming because I understand the nuance of what's needed to be successful, and I'm integrating all different components. And then I'm constantly moving the goalposts. I'm saying, okay, we're going to hit the ball here, then we're going to hit it there. But we're only going to move to the next one after we hit 5 here. And the goal is not to get 1 close. The goal is to get 3 close, before we move it. So I'm training that mental proficiency in there. Or when we go back home, I'll ask him, hey, what have you learned? Then I'll play a little YouTube video from golf where I'm getting him to get in external things where he's connecting the dots of what he's seen with real things. If you've not played the sport, all of this is missing, which means there's a significant amount of work that needs to go in to develop these 4 components. Now, if you're a parent that wants someone to play, the first thing is be aware of the 4 components and look at how are you creating the stimulus around that. The second thing is, there has to be a level of fun. You have to enjoy it. You have to bring in that. And up till the age of about 8, 9, you want them to really have fun and enjoy that entire experience consistently. Only after 9, 10 do we start going in and really honing in the technical, the tactical, getting the right equipment in, getting the right. After the age of 10, 11, the parent needs to decide, right, whether they want to be the coach or whether they want to be the parent. Okay, and you've seen this. You've read autobiographies. You've seen Williams sisters, Andre Agassi, all of these people. The relationship they've had with their parents who are coaches is very different from the relationship people have with their parents as such. As a child who's 10 years old, the only safe place that they know of is their home. When you mimic the voice of the coach who's telling them what to do and scolding them when they not do it right, you erode psychological safety from the home. The first question you need to ask yourself as a parent is it more important that my child feels safe at home, or is it more important for me that they succeed in sport? Because one's coming at the sacrifice of the other. So once you realize this, you'll constantly move away from coaching and become the parent, and that's critical. You need to provide that psychologically safe space for the athlete and leave the coaching to the professionals to be able to bring in that external voice in some shape and form. Because remember, everything that is said to an athlete is noise. Everything, right? And a child is any athlete is trying to listen to all of the variables and make a decision. They're trying to say, hey, I did this right, I did this wrong. They're trying to process information and work out what they need to do. And you are standing there talking, that's noise. You're preventing them from coming to their own decision in there. So what I tell parents to do is, the first thing is bring in expertise, right, as early as you can in all 4 quadrants, and let them provide that and trust them, right? You can set benchmarks, right, for how it's working. And then if that's not working, change it, right? But don't mix your voice with the voice of the coach, because it's going to be very, very distracting to the athlete. The second thing is, sport is expensive. It's not going to be cheap for you to take care of the nutrition, to buy the right equipment, to get the best coaches in the world, to do all of this. It's not going to be cheap at all. I remember just this week, Sumit Nagal cracked top 100 in the tennis. I know Sumit for 15 years. Mahesh Bhupari has been supporting him from the time he's like 8 years old, right? He cracked the top 100 now. He's probably close to 30 right now. It takes that amount of time. You're going to need a lot of resources, a lot of time, a lot of energy. You have to pour it in, because if you want to make your child an athlete, the dividends are going to pay off later. And the one important thing is, yes, you'll have foundations that are supporting, that are helping, right? But not everyone has a vested interest in making your child great. They have a livelihood. That coach needs to look after his family, or people have their own things. So they're going to want to be paid. And the other important thing is, I was reading this article, Tom Brady, Michael Jordan, all of these people, over and above what was provided by the teams, they spend almost $1 million a year on themselves, just taking care of their own health and their own coaches. I remember I travel with the Indian football team right now. Igor Stimac, our national head coach. Luka Modric is one of his close friends, and he keeps saying, Luka's has his own massage therapist, has his own psychologist, has his own personal trainer, has his own nutritionist that travels with him. He has all of these resources at the club, but he travels with his own system because he realizes, professionals realize that in a club ecosystem, I'm getting the basics taken care of. I'm not getting everything catered to my particular need. Understand that.
Wow. Yeah.
In sport, this is the difference. I've had the privilege of working with individual athletes and team athletes. And this is the one nuance I see in team psychology, is that individual athletes take full accountability and ownership for everything. Rohan Bopanna also, now world number one, oldest player to win a Grand Slam, won his first Australian Open, first Grand Slam. Amazing results. 43 years old, right? His level of accountability and ownership is significantly greater than any of my team players at the national football team. Why? He's paying for his coach every week, a salary. He's paying for his physio every week. He's paying flights, accommodation, hotels. He's buying his own supplementation. He's doing that. He'll basically get clothing and rackets and shoes, everything else he's paying for. In the football team, everything's given to them. Yeah. Even the quality of the protein, they'll only drink what we give them. Is it the best? The answer is no, it's not the best. Right? But will they invest in the best for themselves? Very few will. 10% will. The psychology is very different in teams. And it's not necessarily our Indian team. It's all teams. If it's good for me, you need to give it to me and then I'll take it. In individual sports, if it's good for me, I'll get it. That psychology, that level of accountability and ownership is completely different in these two.
I didn't know that the psychology is so much different in a team sport and an individual sport. Let's say 2036 India might host the next Olympics. What message you have, because elections are also coming, what message you have for the Indian government? How should they invest resources in sports ecosystem so that more people are ready to nail Olympics from India?
Yeah, interesting. If you look at our stalwart athlete going into Paris 24, it's probably Neeraj Chopra. There's a very, very good chance he'll win gold now, and he'll win gold at the next one. I said this before the last Olympics. He will become like the Usain Bolt of javelin. He will win 3 to 4 gold medals. He's just that good. He trains outside the country. Abhinav Bindra, when he won, trained outside the country. PV Sindhu, who is also looking to probably crack a gold, training really, really well, has a foreign coach. Okay, we don't have enough foreign coaches in the country. We don't have enough foreign expertise looking in and guiding the ecosystem. Some athletes have access to this, but below that, we don't. Which means that the only time they're getting access to it is when you become a PV Sindhu, you have a lot of money, you become a Neeraj Chopra, someone's funding you and you got it. But that's one in an entire funnel of sport. Right? So what we need is greater access to world-class coaches right at the grassroots level. That's informing the fundamentals and the nuance of what's needed. Remember, success in sport is not about what you can see. It's about what you can't see. Tiger Woods became Tiger Woods, not because of the balls he hit, but because of the types of conversations he had with his dad when he wasn't even hitting there. Same with Andre Agassi. Same with Roger Federer. Same with Serena Williams. It's outside those 2 hours of practice. The feedback, the lessons, the messages. I listened to Igor. Igor Stimac, our national head coach. His son's 5-6 years old. If you ask me, would I take a bet on him becoming a professional footballer and doing really well? 1,000%. Wow. I'll take a bet tomorrow. Why? I've never seen him. I've never met him. But his dad's played in the World Cup. His dad's coached a World Cup team. Right? I know that all of the friends that are coming into the house to have coffee with him and all professional footballers. Right? I know that he lives, breathes, and listens to what goes into becoming a champion footballer. I know, I can trust that the messaging outside the 30 minutes of practice, because he's practicing with other 6 years old, right? But I know that outside of that hour, the messaging coming in is just honing that entire mental psychology. I'm willing to take any bet on that messaging, which is what is needed. We need to create ecosystems where the nuanced messaging is feeding performance.
That's a great insight. We do need more content around this topic where, let's say, I'm an aspiring sports person and I'm young. I can tune in and I can listen what that parent is saying to the kid. For sure. What else government can do? One is bring good coaches and invest not on the top, the 99% other people. Second could be build more infrastructure. Third can be build a national level propaganda that sports is important and let kids focus on sports a bit more. What else? What other countries are doing?
I mean, most countries, so firstly, also most countries, they're getting in this foreign expertise to come in here. The second is world-class infrastructure. And the infrastructure needs to be built in places that are easily accessible.
Correct.
So in India, we have, probably Odisha is the one beautiful place I've seen where the football and the hockey stadium is smack bang in the heart of the city, right? So which means that, it's easy for world hockey to be based there. It's easy for the best coaches in the world to come to Odisha because why? After practice, you got a great restaurant to go and eat at. You got some activities to enjoy and pass your time with. Most other infrastructure is in back and beyond, right? The athlete doesn't want to be there, and the coach for sure doesn't want to be there, So people are feeling forced to go there. There's no mental stimulation outside of the sport to be there. There's no incentive to be there, So what we're looking at, what the government needs to look at when we look at the development of an athlete is look at the holistic development of the athlete. Can his family get there? What's it going to be like for the rest of his family if they come there while he's training? Interesting. We're seeing right now, I've had the privilege of spending more than 10 years in Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is a beautiful country and I've seen it really transform. But it doesn't surprise me that a lot of professional footballers who've gone there for hundreds of millions of dollars now want to leave. They don't want to leave because the quality of football is bad. The quality of football is phenomenal. The best coaches and the best players are there. The country is completely evolving. But I can believe that the quality of experience for the rest of the family when they are traveling is not what they're used to anywhere else. It doesn't mean it's not great, it's not what they're used to. And that is the deciding factor why they want to try to move away. You have to look at the development of an athlete very, very holistically. What's he going to do in the 23 hours that he's not practicing? How is he going to stimulate himself? Is it a place that he can invite his partner or his wife or his child? Does it have good schooling infrastructure where, if his kid comes, his kid's getting a great education? Or are you expecting him to develop with all of these other sacrifices in place? What are you expecting?
Wow.
Nobody thinks about it holistically, and this is the problem. When you start to look at the development of someone holistically, right, then you'll start to make decisions everywhere. A sporting ecosystem that you're building for an athlete is not just about putting a great pool and a great ice bath. It's also making sure that you have a great kindergarten school and a great school close by, or it's on a great bus route, or it's not 5 hours away from an airport and it's just 20 minutes from an airport. And, and if you want an Amazon delivery, you're not going to wait for 5 days to get it. You have to think about every single thing because why? The mental psychology of an athlete is determinant on all of these things.
What an insight. I mean, Government of India, please take this insight, and I think they should talk more to everyone, like the family, the coaches, and make their life easy. And I think they will get more insights in how they can build it.
That's the first thing we do as coaches. As a coach working, my job, and it's not just with my athletes, I even do this with my corporate executives. My job is to remove as many excuses and as many problems from the ecosystem. I'm literally asking people, I had a client who I was coaching, and you wouldn't believe this. when I tell the story, no one even believes me. I'm coaching a client who is a corporate executive sitting in Singapore. Okay. And I'm checking his health markers and I'm having a conversation with him. And it came to a stage where his greatest anxiety was what? His greatest anxiety wasn't the performance of his company. It wasn't his team. It wasn't his communication. It wasn't everything. It was his visa to Europe got rejected. And his son had to start a college at 18 years old in a new country in Europe, and he couldn't take him and drop him there. That was his biggest anxiety. So what did I do? I said, perfect. Connect me with your son. Next day, I jumped on a plane and went there. Because my job to coach him is to make sure all variables are gone so that he can perform. I can't expect him to perform if such a big burden is on him. So I said, okay, I'll fly there. I'll take care of everything. I've gone there, made sure he's okay, sent him a video, checked, introduced him to a few people, flew back home. Done. A lot of times I'm asking my athletes, I'm checking in. Every single athlete of mine, every single athlete, I know where their family is. I know what their parents are. I know what their sporting ecosystem is. I know how many kids they have. I know every single thing about them because 99% of performance is linked to these variables because they know how to focus when they get there. It's everything else that draws it.
That's how a top 0.01% coach sounds like. It's very interesting. I have a lot of friends who just passed 12th and they have done some fitness course, ACSM and a lot of good courses. How can they become world-class coach like you? What should they do?
So coaching is about what is a coach's job? A coach's job is to identify greatness and guide that greatness to its fullest potential. That's what a coach is doing. So if you want to be a great coach, firstly, what allows me to stand out above people in my field is I'm not a sports scientist. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a monk. I'm a combination of everything. I have laid in a degree in sports science and physiology with a degree in organizational psychology, with a degree and a master's in psychology, with numerous other certificates. The learning never ends, right? The more you keep layering on there, the more equipped you are to identify variables in an ecosystem that are needed to guide a person towards greatness. Why? Because you can't stick to a specific niche only. You can be a personal trainer and get a person to get him stronger or get him to lose weight or do that. But if you want to truly be a great executive coach or someone like that, you need to have a plethora of skills that helps you to identify. It doesn't mean you're going to improve everything, but you need to identify the signals of what's needed. That's the first thing. So to be a great coach, one is be well read. Make reading a habit. Make listening to podcasts like this a habit. Be brave and courageous with experimenting and trying. Be willing to listen, but also a great coach is also someone who can be coached. So you have to be coachable. You have to be willing to let go of what's not working and try something new. Most people are resistant to change, but we wake up every morning trying to change someone else, whether you're in marketing or PR or coaching. You don't want to change, but you're hoping that the person you're working with is changing. Such an irony in life. So to be a great coach is layering of skills, being coachable, having multiple resources of information and stimuli coming in there, and really being curious with the world. I think that's the secret. And the one thing that I've seen slowly diminish with time is patience. When I got my first opportunity, I was with the Dolphins. I was getting paid 1,000 Rand a month, which was at that time, now 1,000 Rand is less than $50, $40 or something like that is 1,000 Rand. Okay. I spent 2 years in that job. Right? When I worked with the Indian cricket team for the first time, I didn't even get paid. All my expenses were covered and I traveled with them, but I never got paid a salary. Right? I did that because I needed exposure. I moved to a new team to test my skills. The salary was nominal, nothing. Right? I needed a bank of experience. I needed to spend time with people I could learn from. I feel not many people are willing to invest the time to cultivate those skills and learn those skills. That's one of the biggest problems. people ask me, and I have this a lot of time with corporates as well. You know, I do multiple seminars for groups of CEOs and clients on a whole bunch of subjects, from team communication, dynamics, psychological safety. One of the things I offer for free is I offer a one-on-one coaching session with all the attendees. Some of those take me up to 50 hours to do because there are 50 people in the room. So I span it over 3 months, to get it done. People ask me, why do you do that? It's really not worth your time. I say it's not worth my time, but I learn more from that one-on-one than I learn from any group session. Okay. And every single one-on-one helps me modify and make my content in the seminar more applicable to everyone else. Now, if you're not willing to give somewhere, right, your learning is stopped. Your learning is a byproduct of the podcast you listen to at this thing. But you'll never get the granular detail, the essence of everything if you don't invest time. Similarly, you need to put in that time with a good mentor. You need to stand by their side. As an interesting exercise, you're going to laugh. I tell people, a lot of people write to me, kids, students, I want to be mentored by you. I want to meet with you. I want to do this and stuff. So I said, okay, great. I'll give you my time, no problem. But my time's worth something, and I'm not going to charge you. So I'll give them a book of mine. I'll say, hey, listen, I want you to read Sun Tzu's Art of War, right? And I'm going to ask you one question about it, right? If you answer the question, I'll give you my time for free. Wow. Or I'll say, this is a book. I'll send them the book, even the PDF copy of it. I said, read this book. Right? After you've done read it, write to me, and I'll ask you a question, and then we'll meet it. Right? Less than 1% of people ever come back. Yeah. So they don't respect my time enough. They don't value my time enough. If you really valued what I was going to give you for free, you'd read the book. And this is my way to filter the noise from the ecosystem. I need to know who really has skin in the game. So I'm not asking you for money, but I'm saying, I want to see how much is this really worth to you.
That's a great book, by the way.
It is a phenomenal book, yeah.
Very good book. And for example, if I invest time, I do my education, I listen to a lot of podcasts. And after that, I want to apply. How do you apply? I mean, you send resumes. Is it a networking thing? It is
a bit of networking. The first thing is, if you want to work in sport, we got to carve down the niches here. Yeah. If you want to work in sport, you have to pick a sport, right? You can't be right across the board. I've been lucky enough because opportunities presented themselves to me, but I started off in cricket and I specialized in cricket, and 2 decades later, cricket's still my number one sport. Golf came in because of passion. Tennis came in because of an opportunity, but I then spent a decade in it. Running is a passion of mine. I've run 48 marathons myself. So, and opportunities came in. But for most people, you have to pick a sport and stay in that sport. The second thing you need to do is, once you pick a sport, you need to know everything about it. Yeah. So I would ask people to do not just your certifications in what you want, in strength or psychology, but do your certifications in that sport where you understand the rules. Because why? Your impact on that individual, on that team, or on that athlete is directly proportional to the framework within which they're going to operate. If you don't understand the box that they have to operate in, you're limiting your potential of making an impact. So understand that game. The third thing is, most people want to apply to the most glamorous team. They want to apply to the biggest team, the national teams or the famous clubs and stuff. And if you have no experience, you're not going to get there. Now, remember, just like coaches know everyone else, you look at Jurgen Klopp, for example, in the Premier League at Liverpool. He would know multiple coaches in Division 1, Division 2, Division 3, because they all are connected. Just like players would know everyone down there. Just like physios would know everyone down there. So get into any system where you can start in a Division 3, Division 4, get some experience working with them, because there's a good chance that that head physio you're working under knows someone above him. And when he moves up, it creates an opening and you're the national one. Very, very few opportunities that you will apply for that are paid, they don't already have the candidate in mind. They already know who it is. They're just doing the diligence by putting the application out there. There's a good chance that you're going to apply for a position and you're never going to hear back from anyone. It's not because you're not good enough, because the candidate's already earmarked. They already know. and not just know who he is, he's already in the system. He's just moving from one position to another, So you have to find your way and get into that system. And the first thing you have to do is you have to show people what your potential is. That's how you do it. That's the only way you're going to do it.
Wow. Very, very interesting. I hope a lot of people who want to become a coach of your level, it will be useful for them. I have just last one question so I was reading about rituals in locker room that before playing any sport, everyone has their own ritual.
Yeah.
What's your view on ritual, and what are certain rituals you have seen that you think people can adopt and make their life better? For example, one ritual I see a lot of boxers before the fight, they do shadow boxing. They imagine the scenario, they feel it. It's called incantation, if I'm not wrong. They feel it in the bones that someone is going to punch. They mentally prepare themselves very religiously before entering the arena. What are various rituals like that have you?
So these rituals that you're talking about are very personalized, and very unique to each person. Yeah. This sort of visualization or imagery, a lot of people do it. We used to see a lot of the Australian cricketers, Matthew Hayden and all these guys go out there in the middle, sit down, visualize everything, play it. I do this with a lot of my athletes. I'm sure Neeraj does this as well. He goes and stand there, you bring it in. There's some interesting research around that. It showed that they took 3 groups of people and they experienced visualization with them, or imagery, as we call it in sport. One group of people did no imagery. Another group of people did imagery in their hotel room. And the third group were asked to imagine successful outcomes to sports, but they were taken to the location where they were going to compete in. Every single time they repeated this, and none of these people did any practice, any physical. Everything was just mental imagery. Every time they repeated this exercise, the group that practiced imagery in the environment that they were competing won. Every single time. Why? Because the difference, firstly, let's leave out the group that did no imagery, right? They were always last. What was the difference between these two? Was that it took a lot of mental stimulation for you to create that environment in your mind first before you practiced how to perform in it. First, you had to create the environment in your mind. And in your hotel room, there's nothing. So you had to imagine the stadium, the signage, the boards, the grass, everything. And that depleted a lot of your cognition before you even imagined that. When you were in the stadium, all of that was intact and you just focus purely on performance, right? So imagery is highly, highly powerful. When you do it and where you do it is also critically important. So that's a ritual that's very, very specific to individuals, and we take everyone to it. What's critically important here, and I ran a survey with my Indian footballers. I asked them, we do a team meeting in the hotel, right, before we go to the game, and then we get to the ground. We get to the ground 1.5 hours before the match starts. I said, are you the type of person who wants the coaching staff to constantly give you feedback or give you some guidance or small messages on what you need to do? Or are you someone who likes to be left alone to your own process and your own routine and your own rituals, as you said? 80% of the athletes said, we want to be left alone. Okay, I said, great. Then I said, okay, that's interesting. I went and told the coaching staff, the boys want to be left alone. I was sleeping that night. I go back the next day and I was asking them, okay, we're going to leave you alone. Show me your process. What's your process like? Write it down for me. Less than 10% of them had a process. So I said to them, do you know what you've asked me to do? I said, when you've asked the coaching team to leave you alone, you've taken full accountability and ownership to everything that happens and how you prepare and the outcome. Yeah. Right. Now you've taken accountability and ownership without a process to hold yourself accountable and ownable to. I said, you're a sitting duck. You're a ticking time bomb right now. So if you don't have a process or a ritual or a formula that you're going to stick to, you have nothing to measure whether it's working against or not. And if you have nothing to measure it, you're never going to improve. One day is going to be great, the next day is going to be terrible, and you have no idea what's happening. So this was a really, really interesting exercise, because what this taught me coming back from the Indian football team, looking at it, was so many athletes want the ownership, want the accountability, want the responsibility, but are not mindful enough of the granular details that are going to stack up, right? That are going to lead to great performance. You know, there's no process in place. Without a process in place, everything's going to fall apart. Okay? So some of the rituals that we've seen that really work is, you know, the time you get to the ground, how early you eat before you get to the ground, okay? Making sure that all of your stuff is set in your bags before you even get there, a day before, you know, tracking right from the previous night's sleep, what you ate in the night, what you eat in breakfast, how the day starts depending on what you're doing. When you get to the ground, you know, walking out to the pitch, walking out to the ground, absorbing the environment, all of these things in there. If you eat, what you eat. Generally, everyone has a process with when the coach speaks and where it is. Also knowing where exactly you're sitting, going in down there. Okay, understanding how many people you like to speak to, who you like to speak to. If you want to listen to certain music, getting that music in there. Whatever it is that allows you to get into that zone. The visualization example that you gave me very rarely gets done on match day. It's done many days before that. Day 3, day 2, match -1 is when it gets done. It very rarely, because on match day, there's too many variables that are out of your control. There's the media people pulling cables and the PR and the MC and the crowd already there. There are too many variables outside of your control. What's really interesting that I do as a psychologist is, and this is fascinating, I record voice notes when my athletes are in practice, or I record voice notes when they're playing, extract those sound clips. And during practice, I play those sound clips. So I'm mimicking the environment, the sound of the environment during practice, so that sound doesn't become a distracting factor. Another interesting thing that I'm doing is, as a psychologist, I'm very, very particular about language. So I record voice notes. I put camera mics everywhere, and I record voice notes while they're practicing. And I go back and I listen to what are the words that they're using with each other. How are they talking to each other? How are they talking to themselves when things are going right, when they're making a mistake? And then I go back and have conversations with them on what does that word mean and what is the subconscious signal of that word with respect to performance. So that visualization example you gave me is brilliant, but more disastrous, more impactful than that is the language that they're actually using to themselves. And the last anecdote I'll give you is I did a beautiful story example with my football team. I called them together and I said, we're going to play a big game. We're going to play Syria now in the Asia Cup. I want you to give me the words that you're going to repeat to yourself that are going to describe how you want to show up in the game. Okay? And they said, we want to be brave, we want to be courageous, we want to be hardworking, we want to be committed. I said, great. I said, now let's just run an example. I'm going to ask you a question. And I've asked this to many, many teams and many people. I said, 2 teams are playing each other. You don't have to know their names. You don't even have to know their sport. You don't have to know anything about them. This information is the only information I'm going to give you, and you're going to have to make a decision. I said, Team A is playing, and Team A told themselves that before they compete in this, we are going to be brave, we're going to be courageous, we're going to be disciplined, we're going to be committed.
Very defensive.
Right, that's it. I said, Team B told themselves, we're going to be alive, we're going to be upbeat, we're going to be energetic, we're going to be vibrant. Right? I said, who do you think is going to win this game? Team B. Language matters. And if there's one thing we don't pay enough attention to in professional sport, especially in professional sport in India, is the language that we use. Because remember one thing, no matter who is in the room, the loudest voice is always going to be the voice between your 2 ears.
Wow. That's so true. That's so true. This exercise is very interesting. I'll do it with my team also. We had a long chat, and I think the message, the last bit I want to take with me outside is the story you say to yourself is the most important story. In today's podcast, we learned so much. We learned about which eye is dominant, the importance of eye health. We learned about if I'm a health coach, how I can become a professional coach. We learned about parenting a student. We also talked about government. We talked about so many things. There are very few podcasts which I would personally go and rewatch again, because there's so much thick knowledge. And I promise you that I'll assimilate most of it and apply it in my life. And we will make sure that it reaches out to as many as people as we can. Thank you so much. It was really, really beautiful conversation. It was well spent 2 hours.
Thank you very much. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Like the last time, it's beautiful. I'm glad we had more time.
Yeah.
And to everyone in the room, thank you so much who made it happen and possible. I really appreciate it. Thank you.